Okay, so here I've got another Pauper deck that I've been playing around with. It's basically mono blue affinity, so it's kind of inspired by some of those mono blue artifact decks that you see in Legacy and sometimes Modern. Obviously, we're missing quite a few of the key cards from those decks, like Thought Monitor, but in Pauper we have some other pretty cool stuff. So I'll start off with the lands. Basically, we're running 17 artifact lands, the fuel of any Pauper affinity deck. So the deck is mostly blue. We're running a few other untapped colored lands, but you know, the lands could be swapped out and other colors could be splashed in. So in terms of more mana, we're running Springleaf Drum. 1 mana lets you tap an untapped creature to add 1 mana of any color. Then we're also playing this new card from Neon Dynasty, which is very similar to Springleaf Drum. Costs 1 blue mana. It allows you to tap a creature or an artifact, which is pretty cool. You only produce colorless mana, but in a colorless heavy deck, that's not too bad. Then what makes this really cool is its channel ability. So 5 mana, discard this. The owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So that makes this a way better late game draw than Springleaf Drum, which is pretty cool. We're running Welding Jar as well. It's also pretty cool. You can sacrifice it to regenerate an artifact. So we're also running Ornithopter, which is just a classic 0 mana affinity creature. That's one thing I quite like about this deck, is that a lot of the cards we're running are like old school affinity cards. Like we're running 4 Frogmite, 4 Myr Enforcer, 4 Thoughtcast. So it's kind of like a throwback to Murden Block. Okay, so then we're also running this card, which is pretty interesting, Hard Evidence. 1 blue mana, you create a 0/3 crab creature token and a clue token. So it produces an artifact, which is quite nice for the affinity, which you can sack to draw cards in the late game. Then also having a 0/3 blocker is pretty good, and we can tap it with Springleaf Drum and Moonsnare Prototype. Then of course we're running Thoughtcast, the bread and butter of most affinity decks. 5 mana affinity, draw 2 cards, very nice. Okay, we're running 1 Phyrexian Walket, which is essentially the 5th Ornithopter. Then as I said, in terms of our mid-game, early-game threats, we've got Myr Enforcer and Frogmite. Then finally, in terms of our heavy-hitting creatures, we're running Gearseeker Serpent, 7 mana for a 5/6, costs 1 less for each artifact you control. You can also pay 6 mana to make it unblockable, although getting to 6 mana with this deck is quite difficult. So don't always use that, but look, it's not necessary. The 5/6 body is what we're really after here. Then another decent body for cheap. We've got Carapace Forger, 2 for a 2/2. As long as you control 3 or more artifacts, it gets +2/+2. So it's essentially always a 4/4 for 2, which is not bad. Then we're running 2 copies of Bastion Inventor, 6 mana for a 4/4 with Improvise and Hexproof. So quite a nice threat that it's quite hard for your opponents to deal with. Then for some evasion, we're running 2 copies of Somber Hoverguard, 6 for a 3/2 affinity and flying. The evasion on this is quite nice, but I'm also not 100% sold on this. Okay, so that's the core of the deck. That's the main shell. It still needs some tweaking, and quite a few cards could be changed. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy with this. It's a very aggro deck. It's very fun, very flavorful and thematic. It can have absurd starts where you just flood the board with, you know, beefy creatures. You know, sometimes you can run out of gas later in the game or draw dead cards later in the game and you kind of just get outvalued. But overall, I'd say this is quite a competitive deck. It still needs some tweaking, that's for sure. I don't know the exact numbers of cards to play and whatnot, but yeah, the deck definitely has potential. So if you have any suggestions for cards that I should include or things that I can tweak, please let me know. Take the deck for a spin if you want to try it out. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And thanks for watching.